Hello, fellow audio nerds. I'm Steph, and this is Major Hi-Fi. On this week's episode of What's the Deal With, we're going to be taking a closer look at balanced versus unbalanced cables. I've noticed that a lot of high-end headphones recently will include balanced cables right along the usual unbalanced ones, right in the box. And additionally, one of you viewers, P. Edison, recently asked the question, wanted me to talk about quarter-inch versus 4-pin XLR. And what that question really boils down to is, an unbalanced cable versus a balanced cable. So let's take a closer look at these. What's the deal with balanced and unbalanced cables? So, what's the difference between a balanced and unbalanced cable? From a technical perspective, if you were to take apart an unbalanced cable, an unbalanced stereo cable, like one that you would use for your headphones that carries 2 channels of audio, you would see 3 wires. One would carry the signal that goes to your left ear, one would carry the signal that goes to your right ear, and one is the ground wire. It's sort of this shielding that is supposed to kind of help avoid noise from getting into those signals. And the thing with the ground is that it's not perfect. There's sort of a lot of electricity that runs all around us in our day-to-day lives. The lights, just your various appliances, things like that. And because of that, sometimes noise can get into that signal a little bit. On the other hand, in a balanced cable, if you were to take it apart, you would find 5 wires. 2 of those wires would carry the signal that goes to your left ear. 2 of those wires would carry the signal that goes to your right ear, and 1 of those wires would be the ground. Now, the biggest difference here is that you might be asking, okay, why are there 2 wires going to the left and 2 going to the right? And the reason is this. 1 wire is going to carry the signal as is. It's sort of normal thing. And the other wire is going to carry the same exact signal with just a flipped polarity. Now, polarity to sort of describe it, if you imagine a snare hit, for example, and if the normal polarity, the snare hits and it moves the speaker outward, something with a flipped polarity would basically, when the snare hit, it would move the speaker inward. And so what this does is that if you have 2 signals that are completely out of phase with each other, have opposite polarities, what happens is that the speaker doesn't move because one of those signals is telling the speaker to move outward, one of them is telling it to move inward, and so the speaker doesn't move. You don't hear that sound. So what happens is the signal goes along those 2 wires with flipped polarities, and as that goes along, noise is going to get into that signal. But the noise is being added to that signal with the same polarity. So while the signals are going along the wires with flipped polarity, the noise is being added with the same polarity. At the end of that run, one of those wires, the ones with the flipped polarity, gets flipped back to normal. So now the signal on both is the same. They both have the same polarity, but the noise signal, the noise that was added along the way, now that noise's polarity is flipped from the original one. So as a result, what happens is that the noise gets canceled out, but the signal remains intact. So what's the problem with noise anyway? You might be thinking, sure, if a little noise gets into the signal, what's the big deal? If you can't really hear it, does it make that big of a difference? Well, so many companies, especially companies that are, really focused on the audiophile customer and really trying to make a product that is as clean as possible, things like DACs and amps, these companies know that noise is the total enemy, the arch rival of sound quality. The way that it sort of affects the sound is that you lose a lot of dynamic range. Even if you can't hear the noise itself, the difference between the loudest things and the quietest things kind of shrinks a little bit, because you have this noise floor that sort of limits how quiet things can get. This is why companies like IFI, Chord, FIO design their products to limit the amount of noise that can get in. All of their power supplies will be separate, for example, in order to avoid noise, at all costs getting into that signal. One of my favorite examples of how noise affects things purely based on a balanced versus an unbalanced cable is listening to the Focal Clear through an IFI Pro iCan. If you listen with the unbalanced cable, it sounds great. It sounds really good. You can hear the headphones just fine. But when you listen with the balanced cable, the 4-pin XLR, wow, it is incredible. And you hear so much life and so much dynamic sort of power just come through, and it really adds to the music on a emotionally impacting level. Like, it's really, really powerful, and it really contributes to the groove a lot, the emotion, just the energy overall, and it's a really good example. So if you ever get a chance to listen to that sort of system, you will be really psyched. So should you buy a balanced cable? It sort of depends. The first question is, do you have a device that can take a balanced cable? A lot of DAPs these days will include, it will have a 3.5 millimeter unbalanced output, but it will also have a 2.2 or a 4.4 or a mini XLR. Some of the bigger amps will have, a 4-pin XLR output. But the real question first is, if you don't have a device that can, output a balanced signal, then that's kind of the first thing you gotta do. You gotta get something that can do it. However, I think it is also worth noting that your environment, the environment with which you listen, is going to play a big part in how impactful and how important having a balanced cable is. If you are using your headphones or earphones in, as a way to commute or in sort of a loud environment, all of the benefits, the transient response, the sound stage, the dynamic range, all of those benefits are going to be a lot less audible if you don't have a nice quiet place to listen. So I think, before going out and purchasing a bunch of stuff, it's worth just asking yourself, how am I listening? What's the environment that I typically listen in? And will I actually reap the benefits that this type of change in my system will bring about? Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope this was helpful and informative. If you have any questions or any other sort of recommendations for episodes like this, be sure to leave a comment down below. And for more videos like this, along with reviews and all sorts of stuff, be sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up, because, hey, we like thumbs ups. Thumbs ups.